Hi, Steve Keller.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Are your arms tired? Because you flew in for the interview.
Well, it was a long trip.
It was a long trip. We're really happy to have you in person.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, welcome. And I told you we were going to do a little icebreaker. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the lyrics to this line of the Kentucky Wildcats fight song.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So it's on, U of K, we are right for the blank today.
Man,
It starts with an F.
we're right for the fight today.
Yes. Yeah.
There we go. Had to
We
think
are
about
right.
it.
So should we do it? I don't know the tune, though. Do you know the tune?
Not without a band leading me. no.
Right, right. Okay, so we'll leave that one to the listener's imagination. But the reason I brought that up is because I see on your Instagram that you are a Wildcats fan.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like the games and and do you have a child that's a Wildcat?
I do. My daughter actually goes to University of Kentucky now.
Okay,
So,
all right.
and I didn't push her. It was her choice. So
She's lovely, by the way.
thank you very much.
She's lovely, yeah. That was really cool to see that you were also in that school spirit with her.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you for that. I am Laura Cathcart Robbins. This is the only one in the room, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, honey. So like I said, we're talking to Steve Keller.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to, before we get into Steve, I want to shout out Chaz Allen for connecting us. If you guys remember, Chaz was a previous guest. He has an incredible story. And he's also someone who helps authors with their books. And so he was like, you guys got to talk to Steve.
Mm-hmm.
If you think my story is incredible, you got to talk to Steve. And yeah, we just love him, right?
Oh, absolutely. Chaz is the best.
Yeah, he really is. And you spent a little time with him this weekend, yeah?
I have.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with him in general.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because, and we'll get into this later, but
Okay.
he's helping you with your book. Is that right?
Absolutely. He's a partner of mine on the book. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And he's helping a lot of people with their books. And
In fact, Chaz was inspirational in me writing the book.
yeah,
So
yeah, it is a story worth writing. So I'm really glad that he's helping you out, or that you guys are partners on this. So just a little bit for our listeners about Steve. He's a consultant and writer. He's the creator of a life insurance industry product called Life Settlements, right?
that's correct.
Your company, Kelco, owned a 65% market share of what is now a $295 billion industry. Is that correct?
I think that's the latest accounting from Accounting Report.
Yeah, that's just unimaginable to me. And that you were forced out of business when your corporate competitors teamed up with the U.S. government to take out this growing industry.
That's
right?
correct.
So we're going to get into that for sure. But I usually ask people how they identify. Your website says you are the original disruptor. Is that one of the ways you identify?
Well, I think so because when I look at a lot of the Gen X now, and
Yes.
they're all into disrupting industries with apps and whatever,
Yeah.
which I think is tremendous. I love business, but I was thinking about what we did back then before all the technology existed, and we really, literally disrupted the whole entire insurance industry.
You definitely did. You
Yes.
definitely, I mean, your story is incredible. Like I said at the top, I'm going to have to find a new word for incredible because I don't want to keep saying that over and over. But I want to actually, and I told you I wanted to do this, I kind of want to drop us into the middle of your story, where you were captured in Panama.
Okay.
After being indicted here in the U.S., is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and you're with your family, your wife.
Actually convicted, not just
Oh,
indicted.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So convicted in the U.S. And you're with your wife and your children who were 2 and 5
Correct.
at the time. And we're going to get into the circumstances that led you to flee the country. But I have in my notes that you were actually at your White House visiting the vice president and Tipper Gore the time you got the call that this was going down. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, we No.
Okay, so yeah, tell me what the story is.
Okay, so on Monday I was having lunch in the White House.
Yeah.
With,
Just having lunch in the White House, by the way.
yeah, and can you imagine how many checks and balances I had to go through to get in there?
Right.
So
yeah.
it's pretty hard to get in the White House, and
Yes.
so we were there meeting with the chief of staff for Tipper and Al Gore, and
So this is the Clinton White House, then.
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, this individual that we're meeting with was from Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very wonderful person, nice lady. But we were there to see about helping get a green card for a fiance to one of the bankers that I was dealing with in New York.
Ah.
So there was a matchbook on. They had ashtrays on the tables down there, and there was a matchbook of matches, obviously, and I took them with me as a souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
So on Friday, our company is getting raided by the federal government with 100 FBI agents and other law enforcement was there.
Wow.
So I couldn't help but think that it was the matchbook that I took off the ashtray from the White
Yeah.
House.
Wow.
I didn't know what was going on. I had no
So
idea.
you're like, I shouldn't have taken that matchbook.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
should have left it there. That's hilarious. So you got down to Panama. I have in my notes also that, well, first of all, tell me your lifestyle at that time. Like, how much were you making per year? What did your life look like?
So, when I started out, literally, I used the phrase, I started out of the trunk of my car. It was just me. And within 6 years, the growth happened almost like a .com. And by then, I was, the 1999, 2000 era, I was making somewhere around 25 million.
Wow.
The company was making 60, 70 million.
Yeah. So you were, that was your lifestyle then. And I also have in my notes that it was a ghostwriter that encouraged you to flee to Panama. Is that right?
That's correct.
So were you looking at writing your own story at that time?
No, actually, I didn't even know how to write back then, but I hired this guy to write a financial book on life settlements, and put it out there as, like a marketing piece.
Sure.
And so when the raid hit, the guy was there, and I said, look, we don't need a financial book any longer.
Right.
I said, go out and interview all my employees just at random. Just start interviewing everybody. Mm-hmm. And without me, obviously, there, because I was putting out massive fires at that time. So, and I didn't realize it at the time, but he didn't write the book, but he gathered an enormous amount of notes, which I used to write my book.
That's amazing. But he said this would be a good place for you to go while this cools off, or like.
So, after the dust settled, I moved my family back to, or not back, but to Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I knew that if something happened to me, which looked imminent, that the only way the kids would be taken care of is with a good network with my wife's family at the time. So I chose to move back up there, and we were out, no bond, no nothing after the trial. And I had this guy up there. It was more like a Eddie Bauer type scene. It's like trout stream running back behind us. We lived in a cabin, and this was all very rustic, cornfields around us. And so we're sitting out there, and he said, if you ever want to leave the country, I have got somebody that can help you do it. Mm-hmm. And he said, everything you've tried this far has not worked, and they're not going to stop. And I said, I don't want to hear anything about it. I'm not leaving the country, and it's not even a thought of mine. So I guess about 2 weeks after that meeting, I got a phone call from one of my lead attorneys who said that his worst fear his worst nightmare was now a reality, and that the government wanted to lock me up right away. And I was like, how is this possible? And he said, I don't know. He sounded horrible and really distraught, and just hung the phone up.
Wow.
So after that, then all of my mindset went back to this conversation I had with the ghostwriter.
Sure.
And I'm thinking this may be a good option at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you had gone through the trial at that point.
Mhm.
You had been convicted.
Correct.
You were not out on bond. You were just awaiting sentencing.
Yes. No.
No.
Actually, we had been sentenced, but we were on appeal.
You were on appeal.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and your family were free to move about the U.S. while this process was happening. Well, I mean, your family, of course, but you were free to move about the U.S. while this appeal was happening.
With permission.
With
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah.
But then your attorney calls and says it doesn't look good. So we were saying that you had been convicted. You were sentenced. Your attorneys had appealed. But we didn't say what you were convicted of.
Okay.
So do you want to tell us that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the conviction was based upon mail fraud. And basically, we were convicted for buying policies where people had lied on the application.
Life insurance policy.
Life insurance policies.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we transacted those policies through the mail, then that was the conviction.
So people had lied on their applications. Is that what you said?
Some people.
Some people had lied. And you were unaware of these lies?
In some cases, we did underwriting for the insurance industry.
Yeah.
But the insurance companies has 2 years to review and disavow any policies that they want over 2 years. The only industry I know that has that luxury. And what was going on is there was no underwriting being done by the insurance industry, and we knew that.
Okay. So
So
there was knowledge that something was being done that was illegal.
well, it wasn't necessarily illegal because it's contract law, which gets a little bit convoluted.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't understand this, but and they're looking at us like you guys committed fraud, whatever. But we certainly never broke an insurance law, which is controlled by the state.
Right.
All states have insurance laws,
Okay.
and not the federal government.
So it was questionable, but it was not against the insurance laws of your state.
Correct. We never broke an insurance law.
Okay.
But it's definitely a gray area. And the insurance, the way it works is they have a 2-year contestability. And after 2 years, then whatever happens in that contract is good, and they have to pay.
Okay. All right. So you were convicted, you were on appeal, and you got the call from your attorney that's not good news.
Correct.
The call no one wants to get.
Exactly.
And so you go back then to your ghostwriter after saying, I'll never leave the country. Now this is something you consider because you're either looking at jail time, you're looking at leaving your family, right? If you don't.
Yes, I was sentenced to 14 years at this point.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a long time.
It is. And more than, somebody convicted for murder or anything else. And here we are with a mail fraud charge for insurance policies.
And then, so you flew by private jet, is that correct?
Yeah. I owned a private jet, and I was working in New York 3 days a week in the World Trade Center at that time.
Wow.
And so to get from Kentucky to there is the only way I could do it. And so I knew how the private jet industry worked, and I knew that there's not as many checks and balances as there is with public jet transportation.
Well, and you told me the story, and I'm familiar with it too because I've flown into Mexico private as well. The red light, green light thing that you do, and before you boarded that jet, you had hidden some money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So how much money?
We took $300,000 with us, and
in cash.
In cash, and stuffed it in Pampers and the kids' toys, and
wow.
And wherever we could at that point. Yeah.
So like the box of Pampers, you stuffed it in the box?
No, the actual Pampers.
Oh, the actual Pampers. Wow. Yeah. So that took a little bit of time, right? Because you needed to divide it up. And
yes.
What was your frame of mind then? Were you scared?
Scared to death. Yeah.
Scared to death. What about your wife at the time?
I think all of us were pretty shell shocked, about the whole deal. And then I'd actually had a meeting with my family about it, and both families.
Yeah.
To make sure that this was the right thing to do. And I mean, it really wasn't the right thing to do, and I regret doing that. But because it was not a good answer. There was not an easy solution either way. I was more thinking about the kids and the longevity of being a parent.
Yeah.
And I did not see the need of going to jail for 14 years.
I mean, I hear you saying it's not the right thing to do. I can't say that I wouldn't have tried to do the same thing if I had little kids at the time either. I'd want to be in their life for as long as I could be, in whatever way I could be, I think. I think that would at least be my instinct to do that. So tell us about then deplaning with this $300,000 stuffed in various items and then the red light, green light, and explain to people what that is.
Okay, so when we got off the plane in Mexico, that was our first stop. And they have an antiquated red light. It looks like something that's from 1950.
It does, yeah.
And so you go up and press this button, and it flickers back and forth from red to green to yellow. It's like a roulette wheel.
Yeah, yeah.
And when it stops, if it's on green and you pass through, there's no checks, nothing. Just go right through. And if it hits red, then they're going to stop and check your bags. So my hand is shaking profusely at this button, where I almost had to get my other hand and push it, push my finger in on this.
Yeah.
So when that happened, it hit red, and my heart dropped to my feet. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because we had declared no money. And so my two kids at that time had snow white hair, and which looked really different to the population there.
Sure.
And they were enamored with these kids. And so the kids were a huge distraction to these women that were checking the bags. And while they were
unknowingly, they were distractions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they chose to cater to the kids that were running around to them and playing with them. And while they're doing that, I'm throwing those bags through there as fast as I can and zipping them up without them seeing it and getting to the other side.
Wow. And
we got through there.
That's amazing. I know your heart must have been pounding.
It was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of a lucky break that your kids were light toe-headed.
Oh, it was.
And that was enough of a distraction that you could get those bags through after getting the red light. Right?
Exactly.
I also have in my notes that you were waiting for a refund check from the government. Is that right?
That's correct. Because after the raid, Kelco had lost an incredible amount of money every year. And we had a recapture of our taxes we paid because I think in 2000 I paid $12.5 million in taxes. So there was a check that was coming back for $1.6 million that we were going to direct from a bank overseas.
Yes. And
it went through another bank that I knew very well, and I knew the owners of the bank. And in code, they told me over the phone when I called to see what the problem was, why the check wasn't coming through. They said it's not going to happen today or anytime. And then we realized that the federal government had interceded and captured the check. So now here I am in a foreign country with only $300,000.
Right. And your whole family.
And my whole family.
So this is really interesting to me, your life in Panama, because it was all very clandestine, right? You didn't have a car. I had you rode the Ferris wheel. Was that something that we talked about?
I don't remember, but yeah, I don't know how you picked up on that one, but
I don't know either. But I put it in my notes, so I wanted to see if that was significant. But you were living in hotels,
correct?
Right, using burner phones.
Yes.
Your parents used payphones to talk to you?
They went to a different payphone, and upon that conversation, I would give them the number to the next burner phone.
Yeah. And a burner phone is a disposable phone.
Correct.
Right? That hopefully can't be traced.
Correct.
I'm putting air quotes on for people that are listening. So tell me what your life was like there in Panama. I mean, I just described the kind of the broad strokes, but talk to me about the day-to-day.
Well, when I first started out there, we didn't know where we were. We drop shipped there and trying to make the most of this. I mean, it was it was almost indescribable how anxious I felt about during this whole time.
Mm.
And so you're talking about the Ferris wheels. We took the kids to this park, and we kept riding this Ferris wheel because it was the only point of view we had for the whole city.
That's right.
And we
yeah.
could see where we wanted to go,
Yeah,
where we wanted to
yeah.
be in the city. But I got to the point where I ran out of options, and I knew that by myself I wasn't going to be able to get this going there
Mm-hmm.
and sustain. And I was,
What were you thinking you would do to make money there?
I wasn't sure,
Mm.
but I knew that I had to do something.
Yeah.
So I went and I researched attorneys out of the phone book at the time, and I found this one attorney whose father was a judge there. And I told my ex-wife now that I said, I think I'm going to go and visit this attorney, and I'm just going to tell him the story and see if this guy can help us out.
Mm.
And she said, well, I said, it's your call. So I went and talked to this guy, and at first he didn't believe us. I went back with our second meeting with the kids and the ex-wife, and he said,
because you went by yourself and he thought
no,
you're
he thought I was
crazy
lying. Yeah.
American. Yeah.
So
right.
when I went back, then he said, yeah, he was just blown over. He said, you're telling the truth.
Mm.
So I ended up working with him and becoming his business expert for his firm. And he helped us get established there, set up corporations, and help us get set up without anything in our name.
Wow.
And he had kids, our kids' age, so our families got together, and he took me to vacation with him and wherever. So
Wow.
it was incredible help.
Right. So a name out of the phone book turned out to be a real lifeline.
It was.
For you. So the day that you were surrounded by Interpol and was it the FBI? Was the FBI there?
I think there's every acronym you can think of.
Right.
It was
Right, we
there.
said that. You were not supposed to be driving, but you drove. Isn't that right?
Yeah. I purposely did not want to drive because I didn't want a small traffic infraction to bring down the house.
Yeah.
And that was my fear.
Mm-hmm. And then, so what happened? Why were you driving that day?
So I got a phone call from my ex-wife that she said she was deathly ill, and I had the attorney to take me home early and check on her. And she said that my son had a karate class at the little international school we had him at.
The 5-year-old.
The 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, would you mind taking him? She goes, I know you don't want to drive, but she said, can you do it just this one time? And I said, look, I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable. And so after further begging me and egging me on, I agreed to do it.
Mm-hmm. Was your intuition telling you that this was a bad idea, or were you just like against it because this was the rule that you had set up for yourself?
Looking back, I mean, I think it probably was a little of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then when I left the school, it was before GPS, which is the greatest invention ever was for me. I would get lost in a paper sack. So I come out of the school, and they were waiting on me. And I took a wrong turn and really threw them off. So, but I had...
You mean the feds or
Yeah.
whoever, they were waiting on you. How did you know that?
After the fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So
But-
you didn't see them there, but
No.
you know it now. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I had one guy on a motorcycle with an AK-47 strapped to his back, and he was motioning me to pull over, and I thought it was a traffic infraction.
Yeah.
So I ended up pulling off in this remote parking lot that looked like maybe a Walmart or something had been there years prior, and they tore it down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of land, and
Your son's in the back seat.
he's in the back seat in his karate uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started seeing these cars pull out of nowhere and form a half moon shape around my car. And when they did, they would come to a screeching halt throw their driver's doors open and lay guns down over top of the door. Wow. And there was like 30 cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Like a movie.
Exactly. I thought I was in Miami Vice or something.
Yeah. I mean, were you able to like stay present? I could just feel like a fear blackout starting for me just even thinking about that.
You know, it's really weird because I guess it's because my son was with me.
Yes.
I became incredibly strong. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have been in the same shape you just mentioned.
Right. No, you had to stay present for him.
So this incredible strength came on me that I cannot to this day explain. And you know, he was wigged out, and I was trying to console him, and he said, "Daddy, what's happening?" And I said, "Look, it's not good." I said, "But whatever you do, stay by my side. Mm-hmm. If they ask you to leave, tell them you're good."
Right. What did you do after? Did you get out of your car with your hands up? No.
I stayed there, and then it seemed like I was there forever before somebody showed up, and finally
they were holding you then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then these guys came to me. I don't know who they were, but they held pictures up of me. At this time, I had grown out a goatee. Before, I'd wear glasses, and I didn't have glasses on at this time. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that picture, and they said, "Is this you?" And I said, "No." And I was reflecting back now. I was like looking at this guy that was no longer me.
Yeah, right, so right. That's not me anymore.
I didn't lie. So
yeah.
I was like, "That's the guy I used to be." Mm-hmm. And but anyway, I said, "No." I said, I don't know what this is about, but I need my attorney."
Yeah.
So, and then one of the guys reached over my lap and grabbed my car keys and held them up like it was a trophy for a hockey match, and they started clapping. They were elated.
Wow.
Like I was going to actually run from this arsenal. So, you know, it just wasn't the way it was.
It was like, we got him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I want to say that's crazy, and I know it's whatever their procedure was, but because of the charge that you were charged with, it's not like this was, you know, a serial killer on the run.
Correct.
This was, what was the conviction?
Mail fraud.
Mail fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. This seems like really over the top.
It is. I mean, mail fraud is putting the wrong postage on an envelope. That's
right.
Mail fraud. So
right.
It's all encompassing. And usually when the government can't find anything to pinpoint on you, that's
I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a federal charge.
It is.
Yeah. So what happened then? Where did they take you?
So after that, the U.S. Embassy showed up, and they escorted me and my 5-year-old in my lap with me in handcuffs to a third world jail.
They put you in handcuffs there,
and
brought your son with you.
Yes.
Wow, on your lap.
On my lap.
What was he doing at that point?
Well, I was telling him that his mom would talk with him about all this and explain everything to him. And he did look at me at one time, and he said, "Daddy," he said, "I thought they only put bad people in jail." And I said, you know, sometimes the police makes mistakes too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Like to a 5-year-old in the moment to explain what's going on in a way that doesn't make him ashamed or scared or afraid for you.
Right.
Right. All right. So then from jail, your then wife comes and picks him up, I would assume.
She did.
And were you then just taken straight back to the U.S. after that? No.
That night it was bizarre. I spent the night in this holding cell. It wasn't even a cell. It was a room. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, they came in and put shackles on me and shackled me to a wood table. It was just strange, and left the door open. So I wasn't sure what that was about, but I think they thought either they were giving me a chance to go somewhere or setting me up, either one.
It was a table that wasn't like bolted to the floor or anything. You could have
just like a kitchen table.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I spent the night sleeping on that floor that night. And then the next morning, the attorney that I had befriended and my ex-wife and somebody else was out there, another attorney, was in front of the jail to get me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same time, I had like, I think it was 5 or 6 guys came in the back with AK-47s. And they came in and got me and took me out of the back of the jail.
Oh.
And
while your people were waiting for you in front.
correct.
Yeah.
And threw me in this SUV, and without saying a word, and I thought I was going to die.
Steve. Wow.
Yeah. So this trip lasted for about 20 minutes, and I finally said, "Look, can you at least tell me where we're going? Because I'm literally thinking they're taking me out somewhere to shoot me."
Yeah.
And I didn't know who these people were, and I didn't know what was going on. And finally, after I bugged them for several times, and they finally looked back and said, "Airport." And I didn't know if that was a lie or not, but
Right.
then I started seeing airport signs, so that made me feel a little bit better,
Yeah.
than what I was feeling earlier. But yeah, that was the time I thought that they were going to kill me.
Of course. And I'm sure there was a language thing as well, right?
Correct.
Were they speaking to each other in Spanish and you were...
Right.
So they put you on a commercial flight?
Yes. I was held in the middle of the airport in this secret room with a lot of the military inside there. And I was put in under a light and shoved this paper in front of me like a movie that was all in Spanish. And they said, "Sign this." And I said, "I'm not signing it. I can't read it."
Yeah.
And they said, "Fine with us. Sit here as long as you want."
Oh.
So
So it was either sign or stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up having a conversation with my ex-wife and explained to her what was going on. And the embassy guys showed back up, and I asked them, I said, "Look, what happens if I sign the paper?" And they said, they looked at their watch and they said, "In an hour, we're going to be on a plane to Miami." So I ended up signing the paper, and that's what we did. We flew back commercial, and I'm in handcuffs.
Wow. And so was that like it is in the movies? Like, did you feel everyone's eyes on you as you were walking down
Yeah.
to your seat? And
It's like I had the plague.
yeah. Yeah. Everybody's staring, but no one wants to get close.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. This bad person.
Yeah. 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 So then you're brought back here to serve your time now.
Yes.
You were sentenced, you said originally what you were looking at was 14 years, but were you sentenced to 11? Was that right?
We won an appeal
Okay.
and got resentenced.
To 11. And your family comes back after you leave. Yeah.
They did.
They came back to Michigan.
Yes.
Okay. Where you had hoped that they would have that support, which is why you had moved there in the first place.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you served 8.5 of those years.
I did.
And you and I were just sitting out in my living room, our living room, Scott and my living room, talking about that losing time while you were there.
Yes.
So we had talked, I want to talk about what it was like to be away for that long. And that was, what year? Are you looking for your water?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What year was that you went to jail?
2004, I believe it was. Yeah.
It's prison at
Yeah.
this point, right? Not jail.
Correct.
And then you were gone for 8.5 years. So 2004, I had my BlackBerry in 2004. You had a flip phone. I probably had a flip phone that year as well.
That's correct.
There was an email. There was email. There was the information superhighway.
That's right.
That's what it was called.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole stretch of time where all these other things, all the apps come in, right? Social media comes in. All these things that weren't around then came about while you were there. I want to know a little bit about what it was like for you there. Whatever you want to tell us about your time there, but I'm really interested in that getting back into this life, or getting not back into a life, but joining a life that you had left as one person and then coming back as a second person, I would imagine, right?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It felt the easiest way I can explain this is like born identity.
Yeah.
It's you were one person before you left, and now you're somebody else. You don't even know who you are.
Mm.
Your identity's totally stripped from you.
Right.
And there was a tsunami of learning that happened. So, and I was telling you earlier that when I was released, and my brother and sister picked me up, and I was handed a iPhone that was black on black, and they handed me this deal, and they said, your kids are on here, and I was like, where?
Right.
So
you don't see anything,
you
right?
don't see anything. So yeah, it was just an incredible learning curve.
Yeah. What was that like, seeing your kids after you got out? Did you get divorced while you were in prison?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
2
and
years.
then you 2 years in?
2 years in.
You continued your connection with your children while you were there?
Fortunately, my ex-wife was good enough to bring the kids to me once a month. So, earlier it was more when they got involved in sports and school and stuff. Of course, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because it's a 6-hour trip, but they made a lot of trips down there.
6-hour trip.
Yeah.
Wow. You were being held where? Where was it? With the prison?
Lexington, Kentucky.
In Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
And they were driving from Michigan.
Right.
To see you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it's happened, there at the end, it's like once a month maybe, or for the weekends.
That's great, though.
It is, because I have an extremely close relationship with them now.
Yeah.
And that's what got me through. That was my driving force to get through all that.
How old were they when were they 2 and 5 when you went in?
Yes.
And how old are they now?
My daughter will be 21 in May, and my son's 23.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was that like? Scotty travels for surfing, and he'll tell you more about that. But sometimes he's gone for what I think is a long time, like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
For me, there's an awkwardness when he comes back. Like, we have to learn how to be together again.
Yeah.
Did you?
This is the first I'm hearing of this.
It's funny.
I'm kidding.
Not awkward for you, Scott. Huh? Okay.
No, but it's just like I've been doing things one way, and and so we have to come back and kind of, when he comes back, we have to readjust, reacquaint. Yeah, or I call it reentry.
Yeah.
Did you have that with your kids?
Oh my gosh. I had to learn everything. I felt like kindergarten cop. I came back, and I've got 2 teenagers, and when I'm with them on my own, I'd miss so much that there's no catching up. I didn't grow into it, so you can't learn to be a father, locked up, and not be around them day-to-day activities. So I didn't know how to make a sandwich or what they ate or anything that involved their school.
Yeah.
So it was the learning curve. Not only was with technology, it was with life.
Yes. Yeah. You have to learn to be part of everyday life again.
Yeah.
And so did you have dreams about sleeping on a regular bed, like eating? Was there anything in particular you wanted to eat, like especially when you got out?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story is when I did get out, I had a couple of hours before I had to get to the halfway house. So my family made all this food, and I stopped at a condo the family owned in Lexington and ate all this food as quickly as I could. And it was a hodgepodge of everything. It was breakfast food, lunch foods, dinner foods.
It was like everything you missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a treat.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And had the kids there with me.
That's beautiful. We talked about, because you mentioned the halfway house. This is part of the arrangement when you leave, is that you stay in like a transitional living.
Correct.
And you rode the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the first time?
It's the first time I've ever ridden a bus. So,
yeah. What was that like for you?
It was a different world. And I remember the first time that I was on there in the evening, I could see it looked like a giant firefly. It's just a glow in front of all these faces, and they were hovered over their phones.
Yes.
And their faces were lit up. And I didn't have a phone, at the time. So I just looked around and I thought, man, this is surreal. How much society has changed since I've been gone. And I just started laughing because I realized it, how much it done. And these people all stopped and they looked at me like I lost my mind.
Right.
But I'm just laughing at the surrealness of what I'm observing.
I know exactly because it can almost be beautiful in a way when you see everybody lit up with phones.
Yeah.
But then you realize that nobody's paying attention to what's around them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I did notice about society was that there wasn't the interaction that I'd once known, because people were more tunnel vision and it felt very stoic.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You and I were also talking about that before we started the interview. So you and Chaz are partnering on a tell-all memoir.
We're telling the story. Yeah.
You're telling the story, and it's called
Pay to Play.
Pay to Play.
Yeah.
I love that title.
Thank you.
I had in my notes also that you wrote 7,000 pages. Was that right?
I learned to write when I was, I call it the Gray Bar Hotel.
Yeah.
So I did. I wrote probably at least that, if not more.
Wow.
By pen and paper.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
It was a lot. So
your hand, your hand must be really strong. Really strong hand muscles writing it by hand.
Yeah.
You were able to get it down to how many pages?
We got it down to like 350, I think now.
That's some masterful editing.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I say I wrote 7,000, I wrote and then I read it and said, this is terrible. And then I rewrote it.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I did have the version of War and Peace time I got out of there.
Yeah.
So we had to work on it.
And then so obviously that'll be your memoir. It'll be published one day.
Yeah.
Do you see a movie as well?
Yeah. But it's not really a memoir.
It's not.
No, it's actually, it's a nonfiction based upon the whole story.
I see.
So it does have some about me, but it's not.
You're really telling the story of.
I'm a character in the story.
Yes.
I'm telling the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
well,
it.
I think anyone that's listening or watching, because we're on YouTube, will want to buy that book and read that story. But also, is there a possibility of a film?
Yeah. Right now we're in talks with some pretty substantial folks about possible miniseries.
A mini-series. I love that. Like a limited series?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is to be perfect for that. It's very cinematic. I can see the whole thing. We're kind of wrapping up, but is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you wanted to mention or bring up before we closed?
I think maybe the interactions that I had, why the book's called Pay to Play.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a year after I was raided, we found out that the insurance companies had got together and created this whole entire conspiracy, and their intent was to wipe out the whole entire industry. Kelco was perceived as the largest, so that's why they hit us the hardest.
They went after you.
And it was quoted from one of the attorneys in one of the insurance companies, if they could take Kelco out, the rest would follow. So a year after the raid, I was summoned to D.C. With the head of the GOP fund. And at that time, he came in looking like he just won the lottery, smiling from ear to ear, and came in this private room we were in with my CFO and one of my attorneys. And he said, "So, Steve, have you learned your lesson yet?" And I said, "What lesson might that be?" And he said, "Up here, you got to pay to play.
Oh, wow.
Therefore, the name of the book."
Yeah. That gives me chills.
Yeah.
And had you learned your lesson?
Well, we started paying.
You started paying.
We paid senator's son after that.
Wow.
And knowing there's no insurance laws federally. So, yeah. Right or wrong, that's what happened. And that's what we were forced to do. And we tried to put the thing back on track. And that was not big enough.
Right.
So.
Wow. That is really something. That is again, it's like another chapter to this series that is this adult part of your life. We didn't even talk about your childhood, which I have lots of notes on too, but I knew we wouldn't have time to cover, because I think you were like a pole vaulter.
Yes.
Yeah. In a town that like basically didn't have a track team.
That's correct. Yeah. We didn't even have a track. So
So you were always kind of ahead, right? Ahead of your time. And
I created a runway and a pit, and myself, and borrowed a pole from a university in a neighboring county to me.
That's great.
And end up I had an outside influence, a guy that moved there from Ohio that trained me. Mm-hmm. And I ended up winning the state. I'm the first person to win the state in that county in history.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I said amazing again. I was going to use another word besides incredible and amazing, but that really is. That really is. And so I want to make sure that we tell people where they can find you and follow you on social media if they want to. Where can they find you?
So you can find me at paytoplaykeller.com. That's our webpage. And
you're on Instagram?
Yep, I'm on Instagram as well. And
anything else, Twitter or
I have a Twitter.
TikTok?
Not on TikTok yet,
no.
No. But I do have a Twitter account, and I do have a
Is
Instagram.
that at Stephen Keller?
Yeah, 63.
Okay, all right. Is it Steve or Stephen?
I think it's just Steve there.
I think it's Steve, yeah. So, okay. So, and that'll be in the show notes for those of you listening. You don't have to worry about writing it down. You can just click on the link in our show notes and find him.
And also, I would like to say that I am now consulting and work with a company called the Arden Group. So if anybody's interested in investing in policies or selling policies or want to know how that works, and they can reach out to the Arden, ARDAN, group.com.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for flying out, for sitting down with us. For those of you who are listening, you will hear an edited version of this, but our dog Serena was barking throughout, and we kept breaking to kind of resituate her. And
actually, Steve wanted her in the interview.
He did. He was kind enough to want her in the interview. But thank you for being so patient as we kind of figured that out, because we're in a new situation with our dog. And you were just lovely. You tell your story so well. I really appreciate you coming out.
Well, thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, I'm Steve Keller. I'm the only one in the room who was captured by the Interpol and extradited back to the U.S.